shall go to phase two. All right, so let's start with phase two. So the main reason around BoxLang AI was to bring a lot of this chaos into control, right? How do we deal with multi-model orchestration with augmentations in one stack? And this was the concept of BoxLang AI. How do we bring sanity? How do we make things easy? How do you make you productive to start working with AI, right? Obviously, there's a lot of difficult concepts, right? How do we abstract them? How do we break them down so developers can start creating solutions easily? And that's what we believe is what we have done with BoxLang AI. So we'll start going through some of the things that we've done with it and then discover it very, very intimately. It is a module, like I mentioned before, it's BXAI. It is a complete library that augments the language. It works for any other runtimes. It provides a unified LLM provider for over 14 large language models and routers. So you can do chats, embeddings, and multimodality, and more coming soon. Memory and RAG capabilities. We've created already access to be able to create memory and inject memory for over 20 different approaches. And we'll go through some of them. Document loaders. This is important. How do we actually get information into our vector databases? So we've created a set of document loaders, and not only for vector databases, but you can use the document loaders for anything. We really wanted this to be fluent. We've created a lot of frameworks for many years now. We want to make sure that the code that we create is also readable. That was very important. It gave you the ability also to create autonomous agents. Important. We saw that. That's the main shebang here, right? We want to be able to create agents. Dynamic tooling. How do we support tooling support? How do we create MCP servers? How do we invoke MCP servers? And much more. You can find out our website at ai.boxlang.io. And of course, it is fully documented. Please bear with us. There's a lot of documentation here. It's still in flux as we're trying to organize it in the best possible way. But there is a lot of documentation. There's also an MCP server available for that documentation. Important. This way you can actually add it to your coding tools, and you can get real-time information about how to integrate with BoxLang AI. We've created a bootcamp course as well. Bear with us. We haven't announced it yet because it's still in flux, but it's there. We have over 50 AI examples plus over 20 that I'm going to be showing today online as well. And you can also check out all of our test harnesses. We are a huge proponents of TDD and BDD, and we have over 700 tests just for our library alone. So let's discover 5 key features, and then we'll go through all the source code and tell you where you can start playing around with BoxLang AI. Important, we mentioned the BoxLang providers. Pretty much every provider that you see here is supported. What would I say? I've used the majority of them. Some are good for some things, some are good for others. I've tried to explain that in the docs of what I use them for. There's some that are very specific, like for example, Voyage is very specific to just embeddings. So you can actually transform text into array computations. But I love Open Router and I love Hugging Face, and mostly because they're routers. So I can actually connect to any large language model behind those routes. So I love that. And then Doc Kane, which is amazing dude, collaborated Amazon Bedrock and Docker AI models, which I never knew about. So Docker actually has the capability to run models on Docker desktop, and you can connect to them and have a private local model. So that one's really, really cool. And I want to make another webinar just on how to actually create air-gapped and private providers. Multi-memory, also very important. A lot of capabilities here. So we support many vector databases. We actually created our own called BoxVector. And BoxVector was created mostly for mocking and the ability to test very, very easily in a development tier. It is a full vector database that is localized in memory. Chroma, hybrid, which allows you to basically have a vector and a normal memory in one shot. Okay. Pinecone, Postgres, MySQL 9 Plus, Milvus, Quadrant, OpenSearch, also by Doug Kane. Thank you, Doug, and Weaviate. If you have more, we have an interface and we can add as many as we want. And then standard memories, okay, what are not vectorized, we created a window one, which basically keeps the most recent X amount of conversations. A summarizer, so it'll keep a certain amount of messages and then it will auto summarize. Session-based, so this is if you just want to store messages for users in a user session, boom, there you go. We can store them in files as well. We can actually use the BoxLang cache, which is really important because this opens the door to all of the BoxLang Plus databases. So we have a Couchbase, a Redis, Mongo, and more coming. And this allows you basically to use vector searches and traditional searches with cache. And then, of course, we also have a JDBC, so you can use pretty much any database as a memory. including SQLite. All right, document loaders. We've created different document loaders and auto chunking. This was something very, very important I wanted to add, is the ability not only to load these documents, but we need to chunk them into different types of tokens to send them into these vector databases. So all that is abstracted to you. You just basically choose a size and it'll do everything for you. You can get things from normal text files, Markdown, PDF, CSV, JSON, XML. We've also created an HTTP, so it'll actually try to hit an HTTP endpoint, grab the results, and create a document load out of it. We created our own web crawler as well. Very simple web crawler, but it's there. RSS and Atom feeds. So imagine if you actually wanted to load an entire RSS feed from your blog and have that up for augmentation. You can very easily. System sources, you can say, here's a directory, go scan for every single file source. Or you can say, here's a database, go scan it. Lots of options. Event-driven AI. This was something that has made, I would say, Callbox the framework that it is because of interceptions and events. And we did the same with BoxLang, and we did the same now with BoxLang AI. There are tons of events that are being emitted in different life cycles of the AI communications. When a tool is registered, when a tool is called, when an agent is created, when an agent is being called, etc. And the idea is that we're going to be offering a lot of observation, validation, and analyzation, there you go, for BoxLang AI in our Plus modules. So we're going to have complete dashboards so you can see all your MCP servers, their performance, how they're doing, error rates, etc. So there's tons of things that's coming because of event-driven AI. MCPs was another very important area that we wanted to introduce very easily to developers. So we have the capability to create as many MCP servers as you want in your application. There's always going to be a default one, but you can create as many as you see fit. But you can also do invocations. So we've created a new way to actually invoke MCPs right into the actual BoxLang AI. So you can target any MCP and then basically invoke it. And of course, our BoxLang AI agents to give you all this orchestration. So we've added that capability to have that reasoning loop for input and responses. We've given you the ability to have multi-memory. So not only one memory, but multi-memory, and the ability to have tools and sub-agents and be able to organize and orchestrate with different large language models. So BoxLang AI agents is really a great orchestrating tool, and you'll see how easy it is to put one together. And of course, memories can be traditional or vector. All right, how do we start? Installation is very, very easy. You choose what you're going to be creating. I'm going to be working on the BoxLang operating system today. So just a traditional operating system because it makes it easier. But you can also use this for a command box server, a mini server, Lambdas, desktop apps, which are coming, by the way, pretty soon here. And I'll show you how you do, but we use either command box or use our binaries that we give you when installing BoxLang. Logging and events, important. There's a dedicated AI log, important. So you'll find that in your logs, anything that's available there so you can debug. You can also turn on request and response logging, either globally or per request, and I'll show you how to do that. And you can even register interceptors for observability. Once you have installed BoxLang and BoxLang AI, you can go to your providers of choice and you need API keys. So you can register those API keys with BoxLang in many capacities. You can actually create an env file and BoxLang will automatically read it or command box. You can add them to your shell source if you're doing this at the operating system. You can add them to your BoxLang.json if you wanted to. Of course, you can add them in code, but obviously not recommended. Okay, so I have a bunch of stuff in my demo that I use Gemini and OpenAI and Claude and OpenRouter. So you'll see that in those demos. So it's time to code. So let's move on to our coding here. And we'll start off, first step, what do you do, right? So important is if you go to boxlang.orchestbox.com, you'll see on the left-hand side where it says installation. And I'll show you two approaches. You can do a BoxLang quick installer or a BVM. And we are working on a VBM for Windows. So this is coming, it will be soon. But BVM basically just allows you to work with multiple versions of BoxLang at the operating system level. At the operating system level. Remember, BoxLang is multi-runtime. Not only you don't have a web server anymore. You can if you wanted to, right? But the BVM basically allows you to list how many versions of BoxLang you have at the operating system and then use and change. So here I'm using the current version, for example. If I actually wanted to install the snapshot version that probably was done before I made this event. You do install snapshot, force it, and basically it'll install BoxLang and the BoxLang mini server on my system. Remember, operating system. This is just pure operating system BoxLang. Now I can basically say BoxLang use, and I can say snapshot, right? And that will change to the snapshot. Maybe there is a bug on that one. I said BoxLang, not BVM. BVM use, right? And then I would say I want to use the snapshot version, right? And now it uses the snapshot version, right? I can change again and say current, or I forgot which one it was. BVM use latest, right? And now it's using the latest. Okay. So I recommend BVM. Like I said, it's coming to Windows as well. There's also a quick installer, which is global. Okay. And it gives you all these capabilities at the terminal level, but there's also a Windows installer as well. So we got you covered. You're going to choose your points, right? Here is the repo I'm working on, and I'll put it on the chat as well. This is available for everybody. Okay. And I put all the instructions there, everything that we can follow through. And I'm going to start going through some of these examples. Now, I have VS Code here open, and I have here the repo. I have an env file. I don't have any secrets here because I have a secret somewhere else. But the only thing that I have on my env right now is the BoxLang configuration. And this is important because I want to be able to manipulate the BoxLang configuration for this application. So when I run BoxLang at this level, right, it's going to read this BoxLang.json. And let's look at that. This is the most important part, is configuring the module for BXAI. So you can see here modules, BXAI, and here are the settings. So you can see that my provider, my default provider is going to be Open Router. If you haven't heard about Open Router, I really recommend it. I have an account on it, and you can basically sign up and you can choose all the different models and create different routes to those models. Really recommend it. I've been very happy with it. And you can see that the default params that I'm going to use for that provider is going to be that I'm going to use the free LLM. Might not be the fastest in the world, but hey, it's free. You can change here as you see fit. You also have the capability to choose the default memory. So here you can see that the default memory is a window memory with the basics and the defaults. I can also create different permutations for my providers. Here's where basically I can define that whenever I use OpenAI, because remember, we can orchestrate with different models, and that's what we want, right? We are not going to be using just one model. I can say, whenever I use OpenAI, make sure that you use 3.5 Turbo. Okay, I'm using that because it's fast and cheap. Here's Claude. I want to use Sonnet 4.5. Okay, this is going to be a more expensive one, but maybe I want to do some coding here. A default timeout. You can choose your default timeout for the AI requests. And here's important. You can log the request to the AI log, and you can log requests to the console, log the responses to the AI log or to the console. Really helpful, especially when you're doing with all these types of API calls. Really recommend you turn these on. Be careful with the responses, because there might come with some API keys or stuff like that. So be careful. And then the return format, this is basically the default. The default is single. If you wanted to do raw, then you can get everything that the LLM gives you in raw format. But remember, we're encapsulating here, trying to make things easy. All right, so that's the first step. Is I have an environment. BoxLang automatically basically uses it. It will leverage that BoxLang config. And what I've done is that I installed BoxLang AI locally. Okay, so you can see here that I ran BoxLang locally. And to show you how easy it is, I'm going to create a little folder here called temp. I'm going to go in it, and it's empty. You can see right here, it's empty. And if I wanted to install BoxLang AI locally, just for this folder, so this CLI application, I can say install BXAI -- local. And what that will do is it's going to install a BoxLang _ modules, and it's going to install basically BXAI within it. So that means that this module is only going to be for this CLI application. If I wanted to install it globally, then of course you remove the local, and now it's installed for my entire operating system. Many capabilities, that's more of a BoxLang kind of deal, but I just want to show you that that's what we've done here, is that you can have that there. Remember, we're not in a web app here. So it's right here. It's installed. I have nothing to do there. I have a mini server defined because we're going to be doing a little bit of web apps here as well later, and the README. Okay. You'll see also this strange little file called BVMRC. And this is basically, thanks to BVM, I can actually seed my CLI application to use this specific version of increase editor font. There you go. Maybe that's better. So I know that this application, even when you clone this, it's going to be pinned to this version of BoxLang.